Hi, welcome back. As we all know, it's the winter, it's cold. It's probably about 6 or 7 degrees at the minute in the greenhouse. As some of you may know, I've not really got anywhere permanent to do my brewing. Eventually I'd like to build myself a shed and turn it into a brewery. What I've been doing is just using an extension lead for one of the elements in either the HLT or the boil kettle, both of which have got 2 elements in, but there's not enough to run it on the just a normal domestic extension lead. So what I'm planning on doing is getting a 32 amp feed. In the meantime, before I do all that, I'm happy to still run one of the elements and still do that on the extension lead until I get that side sorted. So what I've decided to do is build a temporary control box with a PID, 2 pumps for moving the water around and the hot liquor. So what I've done is I've managed to make myself a box out of plywood instead of using like a metal cabinet, and I put a handle on the top, 1 PID in there, some switches, etc. So if you're interested, keep watching. This is the box that I've made. It's made out of 12mm ply. The front of the box is just a 4mm ply, just a birch ply, and that's thin enough for me to be able to get all the switches through. Hopefully you can see them. I've marked the 2 marks for the handle, so I'm just using this fine drill bit there, which is about 1.5 mm, just to give a pilot hole. Just something for the screw to bite into. And also being careful not to drill all the way through, because we don't want the screws poking through. The second thing I'm going to do now is, as we said, we're going to drill this hole here. Now when we cut with these drills, excuse me if you're really confident with these, these are meant for a blind hole. So consequently, as you go through, drill a through hole, it's got a risk of breaking out at the back. You've got these quite sharp pieces there that are scoring as we go round, which we'll see as we start to drill. But just to stop it busting out on the inside as it's applied as well, it's quite prone for that, I'm just going to get myself a piece of scrap, which just happens to be a piece of ply, and I'm going to put it on the inside just like that and hold it on with a clamp. Just got to make sure the clamp doesn't foul where I'm going to drill. So finding a clamp is another issue. Right, after some hunting, I managed to find a clamp. It's not particularly, well, it's not the best clamp for this. Well, I suppose it is, but anyway, if I clamp that on there reasonably tight, that's held that piece of material inside. So drill bit's on the drill. Got to aim for the centre of there. I think I've done a not quite. Out there. You may be able to see as I start to drill what I was talking about, these outside ones score. And I think that's it, we've gone through. That's done its job. I'll blow that to it. So if I pop this clamp off, and if we empty it out, you can hopefully see in there that we've got a nice clean hole. So the next one we're going to do is this one down the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do with this one is I'm just going to drill a small hole just near the edge, and then I will probably go and grab my coping saw and see if I can cut it out with the coping saw, because it'll probably be a lot neater. Well, it will be a lot neater than if I just hack it with a drill bit, really. Oh dear. Try and make this look easy, and it's a bugger. Oh, there we go. That was easy. Didn't take too long at all. The eagle-eyed among you will notice that is not a perfect circle, but it's just got to take a little lip at the back of the socket. There we go. There's our 20mm hole going all the way through. Right, just got to drill the vent holes for the fan now. So they're all the way through. So we've got the bigger hole for the gland for the main power coming in, and the three little holes there are going to be the exhaust vent for the fan that will go in this one here. Speaking of the fan, as I mentioned before, I didn't have a drill bit that was 40mm, so that's a 40mm fan, so presumably you want a 40mm hole. So that's the piece that I've cut to go on the inside. I put that little mark in there because that lines up with the hole then, and that will go top left inside. So I want to secure my fan on this face. This is the little fan that I bought. I think it was about £1 something from eBay. Come from China as it all does. So I'm just going to mount that on there with 4 little screws, which I'll do inside. But I'm just going to drill the pilot holes with them screws. Right guys, we're inside. Got lots of things to put on here. So the first thing I was going to do was put a handle on the top. Just something really simple and cheap. There we go, got a handle to pick it up with. Brilliant. Well, that's our first bit to put on. So, the main one is the Inkbird PID. I've chosen to go for the 12 volt version, so it runs with a 12 volt feed, and it's got a 12 volt SSR output, and the model number of it is ITC 100VL Victor Lima. They do a 240 volt feed, but I just preferred the idea of 12 volts running through this and all the switches, and then 240 volt running the other side of the SSR. So we got one of them. We got some switches. I've gone for literally cheapness. I've got a 2-position switch for the pumps, another 2-position switch, and a 3-position switch, an off, an on, and an on. This one here, the idea is, or my first idea was that I was going to be able to switch independently to using one element or two, but I'm not 100% sure whether I'm going to do that now. But later on, when I make a bigger control panel, also the idea of this switch is that I'll be able to switch to the boil kettle or to the HLT, just so you can't run both at the same time, because I think the draw on the power will be too great. So we got them to fit. We've also got where are we? Solid state relay in there. We've got the gland for the main power supply coming in. And I've bought a 16 amp plug and socket for the boil pot, the HLT and boil kettle. I've only got the one plug at the moment, so I'm going to stick it on the HLT for now. It's just 3-pin. As I mentioned, when I do the next control panel, I'll probably get a 4-pin and go for the 32 amp, which will be a bigger plug and socket. And I go for the 4-pin so I can have a separate feed for each element. I think I'll be able to run it like that. May need a 5 so I completely split them. Excuse me. So we got them, and as we've seen earlier, we got our fan, and we got some lights. These are 15mm diameter. The bezels on the switches are 20. I know a lot of you guys use 20mm diameter lamps as well. But I managed to find some 15s which I think look a little bit neater on this smaller box. If I like them, I'll keep them when I make a bigger control panel. But some run on, like this one, a 24 volt. And there's a 12 volt. I was going to use the amber one for the for the element switches, and I was going to use the 24 volts for indicators for the pumps. The reason I've chosen 24 volts for the pumps is because the pump that I've bought is a 24 volt pump. As you've seen, I've already used it and it works really well. So we've got a 24 volt transformer there. This is quite a big one, it's a 10 amp. Probably didn't need to buy anything this heavy, but I was just kind of thinking of longevity really. But it's a big old beast to go putting inside this box. I also need a 12 volt supply inside this box, and for that I'm going to use a little transformer that comes with your Virgin set-top boxes. I've got an old Virgin set-top box that's no longer used, so I'm nicking the power supply from that, which is an external thing. It's just a little black box that transforms. I'm sure you've seen. Ah, there it is. There he is. Made by Samsung, and I'm going to use this as the feed, or 12 volt feed for the PID. So it's a bit dusty. On the end there And you've got your standard two pin power feed, which we'll take off of a power supply inside the box at some point as we do the build. But right, I'm going to crack on and get these pilot lights in and things. And guys, we've got it on. As I mentioned earlier, these I might blank or get a potentiometer to put in there. I do have one. I was thinking of using it for another project. So we could have that being off, that being on, although it is a 2-position switch. Pumps on, pump off, pump off. So that's what the front's going to look like. So we've got a gland to put in here, which I'm going to have to stick in with some araldite or something like that, 2-pack epoxy resin. So the other side, on here we can put our socket. I'm going to take the blue part off of here, because this is a wall mount type of, yeah, I suppose a wall mount. And then you'd access the cable there or underneath. But I'm actually going to take it off of here with these 4 screws and put it straight onto here, and then we'll mount our fan up that side there. Right, we've got the solid state relay. I've chosen a 25 amp for this one, and we've got the heatsink. What we do need to do is ensure there's a really good contact between these two to dissipate the heat. So I've got some of this stuff which I've never used before. It should be just like a conductive grease, I'm thinking. Just on the back. I don't know whether I'm supposed to rub this in or not, but it makes sense to me to spread it. All on the surface. And that will ensure that there's a good contact and heat transfer to the heat sink. Just left my finger, I'll just wipe on there and then wipe off with a tissue. Also, the screws I've got are a little bit on the long side. So what I've done is put a couple of washers underneath. Screw that first one in. It's not overly strong, don't want to tear the thread out. So there we go. And then I'll just use the tissue just to clean off the excess. There we go. That's all on there. So one mounted SSR. So what I'm doing is just creating the bus bars with the chopped blocks, but to link them you obviously need a jumper, but so we don't have to keep putting 2 wires in each. Mark this out. So you take them centre bits out and I fold them on there. open. Eight will go in there like that. Push them in there, tighten the screws up, and job's done. Right, so I've wired up the socket. Let's not forget the gasket this time. So then I'll secure the socket on and then sort out the cabling. So we just need to put the feed from here to there. Should probably drop down this side, or maybe follow that one again actually. Anyway, I'll just sort out that cable or wire. To terminate the cable, I'm using these. There's a little hole in there. Just drop them through. And you can just about see the cable on the end. I haven't got a crimping tool, so I've got these old pliers, and the cutting part is actually flat, so I'm just using them to crimp. It seems to be doing a good job. Well, we're a step closer now to being able to brew in a bit more of a controlled manner, with the PID controlling the temperatures. So thank you for watching. If you like what I'm up to, as always, please hit this button up here to subscribe. Over here should be some more videos coming up, and down in the comments section there's a link to my Facebook page if you're interested. I put things on there that obviously don't share on YouTube and stuff. So once again, thank you very much for watching. See you later.